Hello, everybody. There's a lot of people I see out there that haven't seen for a whole year. And so anyway, I thank Jay for inviting me to come up here and share the story that I contributed to the book. Now, I was in third grade when this story was taking place long ago, and I went to go live with my father and my saya at First Mesa. And they came from a village called Palaka, and Palaka sat at the base of First Mesa. In the Hopi lands, you have what we consider three mesas. And the only mesa that the Tewas are located is at First Mesa. Now, that story was told long time ago about how we Tewas came to the land of the Hopis. And I remembered that when I was growing up, I used to love to hear stories of the history of our people. I loved to hear stories of the insects and the animals and the elements of the earth. But some of my favorite stories were of the people. And so my saya would share stories about her growing up and our relatives that lived around, how we Tewas made the journey from New Mexico to go and help the Hopis in Arizona to survive, and how they gave us a spot right there at First Mesa. These were stories that took place way back. I can still remember stories of the 1500s and the 1600s that had been passed down through stories. And so my saya used to tell me about her mother, Nempeu, and her father, Lesu. Nempeu was an artist. She didn't even know what the word artist was. She made pottery. And people discovered her, and she is known for the revival of the Hopi pottery today. And many of her works are throughout the world in many big museums. And I used to hear those stories from my saya. And so I knew she was important because as I grew up, I started to see books written about her. And that always amazed me. Like, how did they come to write these books about my great-grandma? And so, kind of like a fast forward, I had got married and came to the panhandle of Texas, and we started to live there, and our little family was growing. And so I was starting to get used to being in Texas, and I remembered one day I decided that I needed to go to the grocery store. There were some things that I needed. And this was very unusual because usually I don't make a list when I go to the grocery store. But that day I did make a list. And I was so proud of myself that I didn't forget it on the counter, which I usually do. And so as I was going into the grocery store, there were two other women that were right in front of me. And we were all pushing our carts in and going into the store. And I was kind of looking down at my list and everything. And I overheard them talking to each other. And they were really upset at the fact that when they walked in, there was a display for the customers that were coming in. And the only thing I remembered hearing that got my attention was they said, "Well, can you believe that? We just finished Halloween. We haven't even celebrated Thanksgiving, and they're already bringing out their Christmas things. And by the way, who in the world eats and buys these chocolate-covered cherries?" Well, when they said that got my attention. Now, I didn't have chocolate-covered cherries on my list, but I decided I needed to grab one of those boxes. And when I remembered them saying, "Who in the world buys these anyway?" Underneath my breath, I said, "I do." Let me take you back in time. When I was a little girl and lived with my dad, and then this one particular Christmas time, the local church always celebrated Christmas, and the whole community was invited. They would go up into the high mountains and cut down a Christmas tree and bring it in and place it there. Now, we kids, we were all so excited because a lot of us did not really celebrate Christmas. We didn't know much about it. And a lot of us didn't know about all the gifts that were given, especially me. I didn't really remember all of those things. And so I knew that my saya and my dad, probably we would not have gifts to exchange to one another. And so when I saw that this Christmas tree was going to be placed up there, and they encouraged us children to bring ornaments, and then they gathered us together, they popped popcorn, and we strung popcorn together to put around the Christmas tree, that was exciting to me. That was something new. And then it gave the community a time to bring their gifts to the place and put under the tree to be distributed out to the children and other adults. And so I was really excited about this time. And then one day when we were at the house, there was a knock on the door, and entered a lady who was one of the missionaries that was there at the church. Now, I called her Miss K because she was a native Hawaiian, and she had a very long name that I could not pronounce. And so I would always call her Sister K. She came into the house, and we greeted her. And she said, "Saya, you know, we're getting ready for our Christmas time. And I was told that you had been Santa Claus in the past. And we have been looking for somebody to volunteer, and nobody is volunteering. And so I came to ask you, would you be Santa Claus again?" And I am like, what? My Saya was a Santa Claus? I could not believe it. Because when I first came to live with my Saya and my dad, she always looked very serious. She got her work done. She did her pottery. She cleaned around the house. She took care of her chickens and everything. And to me, she was always very serious. Now, as I got to know her a little bit more, I realized that whenever we would gather together at the potlucks, people would get so excited. They'd say, "Saya Nellie's coming, Saya Nellie's coming." And I thought, why are they getting all excited about my Saya coming to the potluck? Well, I soon learned that whenever she walked in and she had her audience, she became my entertainer. I remember one time that she went, and there was a young relative with his girlfriend sitting there, and she went and sat on his lap and circled her arm around his neck, and she looked at him and she said, "Well, hello, boyfriend." And so he got all embarrassed, and his girlfriend got embarrassed, and everybody started laughing. But she would do little things like that. And so I started to understand that she was a different kind of character than what I had seen on the outside. And so when Miss K came and asked her to be Santa Claus, I was just so excited. I thought, oh, I hope they don't find anybody. Well, about 2 days before the celebration, Miss K came back. Saya, we have not found anybody to be our Santa Claus. And so Saya said, okay, I will do it. I was so excited. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't even imagine my little grandma that made her own little dresses, had her cotton stockings on, you know, those that they used to wear a long time ago. And she didn't have like hard shoes. She always wore Keds black tennis shoes. And that's what she wore all the time. And so I couldn't even imagine her dressing up as what I thought Santa Claus looked like. Well, after Miss Kay left, she started to gather things together that she would need for that night. She asked my dad if she could borrow his thermo underwear, the top and the pants that he would put on at night when it was cold. And she asked for some socks that he had, and she got out this the flour sack. And there in Arizona, there was special flour that we call bluebird flour, very soft, and that's what a lot of the people back home, they use when they're baking. And so she had cleaned it up, and she used that to stuff her things, her items in, and she put her comb in there, just waiting for the day. Well, when it came, there was a little bit of frost in the air, and my dad said, "Drina, you go with your Saya to the church, because it's getting cold outside and it's getting to be a little bit wet. I don't want her to get hurt as she goes." So I said, okay. And I was expecting him to come with us. And he said, I'll come later. I said, all right. So Saya and I got ready to go, and we put on our coats, and she got her bag, and out the door we went, and we went all the way down. It is about a mile away, and at first it was kind of flat, and then you had to climb up a trail to the top where that little building was that they gathered. And so when we got there, Miss Kay was waiting for us. She lived in a little trailer that was off to the side. It was like a turquoise color. I really liked that trailer because I love turquoise. And so she said, come on in. I'm ready for you. And so there on the bed was Santa Claus clothes. She had black boots for her, a red pair of pants and a jacket, a hat, and even a beard. And so when Saya got ready to get dressed, she was putting on all these things that she gathered from my dad, and she put on the pants and the jacket, and she said, do you have a pillow? And Miss Kay said, yes, I have a pillow. And there was a black bag, a belt that she put, and she stuffed herself with that pillow and put that belt around her, and she had a huge belly. And then she put on the beard and let her hair down. Now, Saya, she never lets her hair down. Even when she goes to bed, she would let it down, comb it, and then braid it for the night. And so that was very unusual. And like I said, she always wore tennis shoes, not boots. Never wore pants. She always had her dress on. So all of these things were exciting for me to watch her transform into Santa Claus. And after she had got herself together, she asked for some of that stuff that you put on your cheeks. She said, Miss Kay, Sister Kay, do you have that stuff that you ladies wear on your cheeks? She said, blush? Yes. And so she put some of that on. My Saya never wore makeup, so I was so excited. And then she stood there and said, Eldrena, listen. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas. What do you think? Did I sound like him? Yes, but a little bit louder. And so she did it again. And then we were ready. Somebody came and knocked at the door and said, are you ready to come? And so all three of us went out the trailer and walked to the front door of the building, that church building. And just as we were getting ourselves together, Miss Kay and I were going to go inside. But all of a sudden, coming around the other side of the corner was another Santa Claus. And we looked, and Saya and Santa Claus looked at each other, and they started laughing. And the people that brought him said, this is our relative. We finally got him convinced to be a Santa Claus. We found a Santa Claus suit and got him dressed and here as soon as we could come. And then, now, there were two Santa Claus. And I was so upset. I thought, they're going to go with him because he's a man and Santa Claus, you know. And about that time, Saya, being as witty as she was, she said, hold on a minute. I'll be right back. Don't go in without me. And she said, Eldrena, Miss Kay, come on, let's go. And so we went back to the trailer. As soon as we got in there, Saya took the hat on, took the beard off, and she took the belt off and put that pillow up higher and cinched it underneath. And I was going, oh, Saya, you got big breasts. And she just said, well, that's Miss Santa Claus has to have the big breast, you know. And then so she transformed herself into Miss Santa Claus. And then she tried out her ho, 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 Merry Christmas again. And then she asked Miss Sister Kay, do you have that some lipstick so I can put it on my lips? And so Miss Kay, she went ahead and artfully kind of just put that lipstick around her lips. And then she was ready to go. I could not believe my Saya just transformed herself so quickly, and out the door we came. And then there they were together. Well, Sister Kay and I went inside the building. I sat down. I could hardly wait for the people and what they would think of and the excitement. And so all of a sudden, Sister Kay told everybody to take their seats. She said, I believe we have some special guests coming. And so everyone take your seat. And about that time, they were announced. They knocked on the door. And as soon as the doors were open, in stepped 2 Santa Clauses, people were thinking. And then it's like Saya looked at their confusion and she said, "Well, hello there, everybody. My name is Miss Santa Claus. I came with my husband. I said, honey, I'm going to come with you this time because your eyesight is getting bad. And when you go out there, you might not know where you're going. You might get lost. So I'll drive the sleigh tonight." And so I came with him. And I said, "Oh, honey," I said, "can you let me borrow some of your pants? Because it sure is cold outside. I don't want to get my legs all cold and everything." And so he let me borrow his pants. Boy, that my husband has got big waist, so I just had to put his belt on. And so here I am. And everyone just started laughing. Now, as soon as they had started to greet everybody, it was time to get the gifts out from underneath the tree. Now, I knew I probably wasn't going to get one of those gifts that were wrapped because my Saya and my dad did not have the money to buy something like that. But my excitement was just watching everybody else get excited. And so I happened to look to see where my dad was, and there he was sitting, and he had been given a sack. And when he opened it up, it was sacks of that was inside like fruit and nuts, and he even got some ribbon candy. And when I saw that, I was so excited because I knew that probably was the only Christmas gift that my dad was going to get that year. And so I was so happy for him. Not only that, but some of my favorite was ribbon candy, and I knew he'd share with me. And so Saya, all of a sudden, there she's standing. She has one more present in her hand. And she looks at me and she brings it to me and gives it to me. And I'm thinking, what? I got a gift from Santa Claus lady? And so I opened it up. And when I saw what was inside, I said, "Oh, chocolate-covered cherries. That's one of my favorite Christmas treats." And when I opened it up, I remembered my dad and my Saya. They were always saying, remember, when you're sitting around your friends and you get something special, you share. I wasn't sure if I really wanted to share my chocolate-covered cherries, but I opened it up and I said to my friend, "Would you like one?" And she goes, "Oh, yes." And so she took one and bit it inside, and I asked the other, she said, "No, I got some candy." I said, "Okay, good." And then I held on to it. Now, you know those long time ago. Nowadays, they don't taste as good as I remembered, but I still eat them. And I grabbed one, and I bit inside of it. And my teeth going crunch on that outer chocolate, and then getting to that cherry inside, and the syrup kind of goes down your fingers, and you get all sticky, but it's so good. And so I enjoyed my chocolate-covered cherries. Now, I knew that story happened a long time ago, and those ladies brought back that memory that I had forgotten. And so from that day on, every Christmas, either somebody gives me a box of chocolate-covered cherries, or I make sure when I see that display in the grocery store, I grab one. Now, I take the milk chocolate usually, but everybody says dark chocolate is healthier, so I go ahead and grab the dark chocolate one too, just in case. Now, the story that I chose to tell about my ancestors, to remember who they were, was this story, the chocolate-covered cherries. And I think about my Saya, and I am so glad that I still have those memories of long ago as a child. And I remember just thinking about those times when Saya would be crazy and dress up like Miss Santa Claus. And when I share this story with my family, especially the little ones, they just laugh, and as if they actually can see her themselves. That's what stories are, memories of the past. And I'm so glad I have that story of Saya being Miss Santa Claus to share with you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.